That's just the start, because for over $4.5 billion, you have yet to tell Minnesota where you're going to get the money. If you increase the income tax to the highest level throughout the entire country, you would only get another about $800 million. So where are you going to get the money for the spending? You cannot keep these promises, and yet you continue to try to tell Minnesotans that you can. 9.15% tax bracket here in Minnesota. Do you think that's a good message to send businesses? Do you think that's a good message to send families? Work hard, invest hard, take some risks, and by the way, but not too much, because we're going to take your money if you succeed. What a terrible message to send Minnesota and to send this country right now, here today. You're going to be increasing taxes on over 40,000 small businesses at a time when they can't afford one more dollar. At a time when small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy, and your bill harms them. Your bill harms economic recovery and economic growth in this state. Why? Because government has an insatiable need to spend. Minnesotans expect the government to live within their means just like they do, and that means that we need to make sure that we're pulling back our spending in real ways. And I reject the idea that it's only tax more or cut. There's many other alternatives, and House Republicans have brought forward a lot of them. We've brought forward ideas on how we can reform health and human services, how we can reform how we budget, how we can reform taxes. We've brought forward all sorts of ideas, but, we don't get much traction on the other side of the aisle. So, Madam Speaker and members, this is a tax increase bill on Minnesotans in the amount of over $1 billion on the small businesses and families of this state at a time when they can afford it least. And if you are worried, Representative Solberg, about illegal bills, you ought to worry about this one. This bill does not balance our budget for 4 years, is what our law requires. Our law requires that we balance our budget for 4 years. This bill doesn't do that. This bill leaves over $4.5 billion unaccounted for in the next biennium. 126 of us in this body voted to make sure that we had a better accounting practice in this state. 126 of us said, you know what? We want to have 4-year balanced budgets. But your bill doesn't do that. It goes the opposite direction. In fact, it has over $4.5 billion deficit. So, members, I would argue that if you look at the language in the balanced budget requirement, a budget proposed by the governor and enacted for the fiscal years 2010 and 11 must also provide for a balanced general fund budget in fiscal years 2012 and 13. We all voted for it, all but 3. This bill does not abide by our laws. Our laws said we have to balance our budget for 4 years. You have not done so. So, members, I would ask you that you vote not to concur. This bill will harm our economy. It taxes small businesses. It leaves a budget deficit. It deficit spends in the worst way, and it does not solve our budget deficit. Please vote to refuse to concur. I just wanted to clarify a statistic that was brought forward earlier. We just received some additional information from the department, and I think it's important to have the real numbers. And unfortunately, it's a result of having very little time with big legislation. Madam Speaker and members, I had indicated that 46% of the folks who are going to be seeing this new tax would be individuals who have small business and farm income. The fact of the matter is that number was low. Out of the people who are going to be seeing tax increases through this legislation, the number is actually closer to 60%. 57% of those people have business and farm income. So it is small business owners that we're talking about, and I just wanted to make sure that we have the real numbers before people vote to harm small business and business owners in this state. Madam Speaker and members, this bill increases our tax rate to 9.15% on small businesses and families in the state, gives Minnesota the 5th highest income tax rate in the nation. It raises taxes on small businesses at a time that they can least afford it. It has no reform. It does not do what we were all wanting to do, which is improve our job climate and make sure that we have jobs in our economy throughout the entire state. This goes in the opposite direction. This bill, Madam Speaker and members, if you move it forward, this bill hangs a sign on Minnesota that says closed for business. And I'm not ready to give up on Minnesota businesses yet, and I'm not ready to give up on this state. So I'm going to vote no today, and I hope that you will join us in voting no, because this bill is not good for our state long term. This bill might solve a short-term budget deficit, but it does not position our state for economic recovery. It does not position our state for economic prosperity. And members, I ask you to stand with us on a bipartisan basis and vote no. This bill harms Minnesota and moves us in the wrong direction, and there will be no bipartisan support, only bipartisan opposition, and I thank those of you who have that opposition. Let's get this bill off the table. Let's get to a real solution, one that doesn't just balance it in the short term, but gets the long term as well. Members, please vote no.